Hi, welcome to my studio. Today I'm going to save this old canvas. Let's see how. Before we can save the canvas, we have to create something to put on the canvas. And I'll show you the canvas in just a minute. Um, but I just have a stack of craft colored tissue paper and a couple of text stamps. And I have a sepia and jet black archival ink pads. And I'm just going to cover the entire piece of tissue paper with the stamped images. And I'm going to use the smaller text with the brown ink for the entire background. And I put it on that dilution block, but it's lost its cling. So I'm just doing it by hand, which is fine. And my ink pads are getting kind of dry. I'm going to have to get some re-inkers, but I kind of like the kind of faded look anyways, and I'm getting, some that are like second generation stamping images too. So some are lighter, some are darker. And then I have the stamp that has the larger text, and I'm just going over top of the brown with the black ink and just kind of, it's sort of a pattern, but yet it's kind of random. But just getting some of that stamped image all over that sheet of tissue paper. So here's the canvas. I had, a couple weeks ago, I was experimenting with some Distress Oxide paint on this canvas, and it just wasn't doing what I wanted it to, so I just kind of put it aside and let it dry. So I gave it just a light sanding, and I am going to first glue down all these pieces of dress pattern paper. I just tore random pieces off, different sizes, and some have lines, some have text. So I'm just going to get that down on the canvas first using matte medium. And my goal is to end up with 2 layers of tissue, this one in the background, but I know when I put the other tissue paper with the stamped images on top of this, that the markings of this dress pattern paper will show through the tissue paper that's going to go on top. And so I'll kind of have a more of a layered look, a little less structured look, and that will be my background basically for the focal images that I will put on top of this. So I'm just getting those all down. And then I'm drying everything really well, you guys, but I'm just not showing that because, you got to dry stuff between layers. So here I'm just fitting the stamped tissue on top of the canvas. And I want a little bit of overhang on each side so that I can wrap it around the edges of the canvas. And this is just a cheap stapled back canvas. And you can see the marks from that dress paper just starting to just shine through that tissue, but yet you still see the stamped images that are on the tissue paper as well. So I really like creating a kind of a multi-layered look with text. And this is an easy way to do that. And you can do this, you guys, on cardboard, on, any substrate. You could do it on a piece of watercolor paper. If you don't have a canvas, go to your local thrift shop and pick up an old painting or an old manufactured, picture like you would find in the department stores that people have discarded, and use that, because everything's getting covered up. You just need to put some gesso and a layer of paint on first. So I've chosen these elements, and I have some old lace, and I just put together that little collage with some Tim Holtz ephemera pieces, and these are some roses that I made just by cutting a spiral out of a book page, and then you just roll it up and glue it down, or glue the bottom. And then this is just an image from the internet, copyright free image. I think she came from Pixabay or maybe Unsplash. At any rate, she's just printed out on regular printer paper from my inkjet printer. And I find if you let things sit that have been printed on an inkjet, they kind of cure or something. I didn't have any ink smearing or running when I put this down with the matte medium. So and just making sure that she is completely covered with matte medium so that anything I put on top of her isn't going to like immediately soak into that paper. So then I have some clear glaze medium and some medium flesh acrylic paint, and I want to just paint or tint her face and her hand, just the skin portions of the image. And so that's what I'm doing here. And this just kind of reminded me of my high school graduation pictures. I mean, back in the day, our graduation pictures were all black and white except for if your parents could afford to pay the photographer to hand color like an 8 by 10 or a larger picture that was going to be framed. And that's basically kind of what it looked like. It looked like they just took paint and painted, which I'm sure that's what they did. They painted over top of the black and white photograph. So this kind of made me chuckle as I was doing this. It's like, yep, that's why we did it way back in the olden days. And I just took the baby wipe and just got rid of any paint that is on parts of her face that I didn't really want covered, or didn't want the shadows obscured, like down the side of her nose and her nostrils. Just wanted to let some of that shadow show through a little more, which is another nice thing that happens when you put the matte medium on and dry it before you paint it, is you have the ability to kind of wipe things back a little bit. Now I have some persimmon acrylic paint, and I'm going to mix that with the medium flesh that I still have on my palette there, and using that real scruffy old brush, I'm going to get some tint on her cheeks, just so she has a little bit rosier cheeks, which also reminded me of my high school graduation picture. I had rosy cheeks that were painted on, so too funny. Sure is different nowadays. By my granddaughter's graduation pictures, you know, they go out. We just sat on a stool in a photography studio. We didn't go anywhere. You know, it was like the middle of August and we had on fall sweaters and whatever. But now the kids like change their outfits, and well, you know, I'm sure it's just way different. So this kind of makes me chuckle. And then I just dried that all off. And I'm not sure that I showed it, but I did just dip my wet finger. Yeah, I dipped my wet finger into that persimmon paint and just kind of tapped it onto the flower there on the left side of her hat. And I just stapled those two lengths of lace to the back. So then when I grabbed this little collage piece, I realized, oh, I really wanted that to be behind her. So I had to do a little finagling, and I'm just going to cut part of the side of the collage off to fit around her hat there to make it appear as though it's behind her. That's the only option I had because she was glued down really, really, really well. So then it worked okay. And there was less bulk as far as layers of paper anyway, so it was fine. So I just used the heavy gel matte medium to glue that little collage element down. And just made sure all the edges were down tight, and that was that. And then still using the heavy gel matte medium, I'm going to just get all of those roses glued down the left side of the canvas. I'm using the heavy gel matte medium, holding it for a second, but then getting my fingers underneath and just those bottom layers of paper, I'm trying to make sure that they get pushed into the glue so that enough of the flower is attached to the canvas. So I just spaced them out the way I wanted them and got those all glued down. Now I have some Tattered Angels Glimmer Mist, and it is rose gold. And I'm just going to spray that across each one of those flowers to get just a light coating on all the petals. And once I have that, then I can go in closer and get a heavier concentration of the spray down in the center of the flower, just to kind of create a little more dimension, maybe a little bit of realism. And wiping that spray away, overspray, so I don't get everything into it. And then I'm spraying a little more in between the flowers and just kind of letting those drips run across the canvas, as you can see, and just dabbing back the excess. I didn't really want it running across the girl. Just such a pretty color of Glimmer Mist, though. I really like it a lot. And it was perfect for this piece because if you remember, I started with that kind of peachy paint color on the canvas. And I just, whatever I had left on my baby wipe of that Glimmer Mist, I just kind of dabbed it across the lace just to let the lace pick up a little bit of that. Now this is a broken vintage earring. It has pearls and I don't know, kind of the white petals. I don't know what they're made of. They're not plastic. They were a little bit shiny. I'm not exactly sure what they were. Maybe some kind of like a plaster material. Anyways, I sprayed that with the Glimmer Mist too. And then using E6000, I'm just going to put the earring there at the base of her, the nape of her neck to make it look like a brooch. And we're rounding third and heading home here pretty soon. So then I just covered up her face and then I watered down some black acrylic paint and took my fan brush and I'm just getting some black splatters. I start out with just real tiny ones and then gradually build up to some bigger ones and heavier in the corners, and then finally a couple of great big splatters. And then off camera I used my Stabilo pencil and went around the focal points and then just took a brush with water and spread it out to just create a nice soft shadow around everything. And that is it. I thought about adding some words, but I wasn't quite sure what I wanted, so nothing's been added yet. I might find something. So thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed watching me save this canvas. If you did, give the video a thumbs up. I'd appreciate it if you'd share it out. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do that and hit that bell so you know when I upload new videos, which I try to do twice a week. And in the meantime, go make some art. Bye.